This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, emerging market stocks slipped today as investors flocked to the perceived safety of the dollar as well as the yen and gold. That was after US President Donald Trump tested positive for COVID-19. Now, MSCI's index of developing world stocks fell 0.2% on the day, but was still on course for a weekly gain. On the continent, South Africa's JSE fell today. It tumbled over 1% at some point after Trump's announcement. Now, heavyweights BHP Group, Anglo-American, as well as Naspers led the local index lower today. The index for resource stocks also retreated 1.2% as diversified miners joined gold and platinum producers in that retreat. Also, a weaker rand drove the index for banking stocks down today for the first day in 5 days, falling about 2.3% today. Now, also coming up on today's show. Côte d'Ivoire hikes guaranteed minimum cocoa prices by 21%. Nigeria announces at a $33.2 billion budget to help restore economic recovery. And we look at how TikTok has turned fortunes for a social media influencer in South Africa. Well, we start off today's bulletin in Côte d'Ivoire. The world's biggest cocoa exporter is set to hike the guaranteed minimum price for farmers by about 21%. Now, this will be for the 2020-2021 growing season. President Alassane Ouattara says the floor price will be increased to $1.79 from the previous $1.48 per kilo. According to the International Cocoa Organization, the 2020-2021 harvest in the country is expected to be around 2.1 million tons.
I am very pleased to announce that we have decided not to lower the prices to producers. This is the first good news. The second good news is that we have even decided to increase the price from 825 to 1,000 CFA francs per kilo. Ghana has set the price to producers at around 1,000 francs per kilogram. This increase reflects our commitment and determination in both countries to improve the incomes and living standards of our producer friends. This commitment and determination will continue and intensify.
Well, let's get more on this. Nabil Ahmed Rufai is in neighboring Ghana, Accra, which of course is Africa's second largest producer of cocoa. He now joins us with some more insight. Nabil, always good to see you on the show. Now, of course, President Ouattara's critics say that this is a political move ahead of his bid for a third term in office. Others say, much like Ghana, this was a much-needed move to shore up prices and, of course, reduce poverty amongst cocoa farmers in the country. What has been the reaction to this move so far?
Thank you very much, Uti. Exactly. You know that since last year, both Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire have been pushing for an increase in the floor price of cocoa. And this increment that the president of Ivory Coast, Alassane Ouattara, announced is the fact that global buyers have agreed for the floor price to be $2,600 per ton of cocoa, and also an additional living income differential of $400 per ton of cocoa. So largely, this is because this agreement has been reached by buyers and in effect, the government of both Ghana and Nigeria had to announce the increment. So that is what it is actually. But then, of course, with elections drawing closer in Ivory Coast and everything has some political undertones to it, definitely critics will say that it is an attempt to really win votes from especially those who are within the cocoa sector. We know that about 6 million people in Ivory Coast benefit from cocoa, and the president, when he made this announcement, said the people who had gathered there should go into the villages and spread the good news. So if you would want to really give meaning to what he said, it is an attempt to really coerce people or to influence people to vote for him to go ahead with the good works that he's doing for the benefit of cocoa farmers. And on the other hand, cocoa farmers are really happy about this increment of the floor price, because over time, this is what they've been calling for. We know that a lot of the cocoa farmers are impoverished, and they believe that this increment is really going to help their livelihood, is really going to reduce the poverty levels among cocoa farmers. So it goes both ways, the political aspect as well as the benefits that these cocoa farmers are really going to gain from this new adjustment of cocoa prices. Uche.
Well, Nabil, Ghana was actually the first to make that decision to raise the farm gate price for cocoa by about 21%. And that move did receive some mixed reaction, especially from traders. Give us an update on how the scheme is working out in Ghana and how much it has benefited the farmers in Ghana so far.
Well, Uche, the scheme, since the government, especially the Ghana Cocoa Board, which oversees the sale of cocoa to global markets, actually have been pushing for this. They have said that they've received some positive feedback from chocolate brands that are interested in buying these cocoa beans, and the fact that they have agreed for an extra $400 per ton of cocoa bean means that they are quest is on course to improve the livelihoods of cocoa farmers. So it's a positive outlook here in Ghana, the fact that they've been able to achieve this, and cocoa farmers are also expected to really boost their production of cocoa. Once they are going to get an increment in the sale of their floor price for cocoa, it's expected that they would really work hard to produce more of the cocoa beans. The Ghana Cocoa Board actually is estimating a production of 1 million metric tons of cocoa for the 2020-2021 crop season, for the fact that it's been able to really reach this agreement of increasing the price with the global market. Uche.
Well, let's refocus on Cote d'Ivoire's cocoa market and its outlook. According to experts, it will be collecting a record cocoa crop this season. But that has brought up some questions about the outlook for the overall sector, given that, of course, the market right now is bracing for political unrest in the upcoming elections. And, of course, we've seen the market hit by demand due to COVID-19. So what is the outlook for Cote d'Ivoire's cocoa sector?
Well, Uche, generally the outlook for production of cocoa in Ivory Coast looks very positive because we are learning from farmers that they are experiencing an above average rainfall at the moment, and if things should continue this way, we are now in the crop season between October and March. They expect that if the rainfall patterns continue above average, then they should be able to see much production of the cocoa beans during this 2020-2021 crop season. And there are some estimates of a production of 2.2 million tons of cocoa for this particular season. So for production, it looks really good. But then on the other hand, we know the fact that the country is heading towards elections, and Ivory Coast, anytime there is some unrest after the elections, when one party is not in agreement with the results, the lack of stability in the governance really affects the cocoa sales on the global market. There is actually a disruption of the supply of cocoa anytime there is an unrest during an elections or the aftermath of Ivory Coast election. So if something like this should happen, we know that although there is an expected increase in production of cocoa, there could be disruption in terms of the supply of cocoa to the global buyers. But then we also know that with the COVID-19 situation, a lot of the chocolate companies were highly impacted by it, and economies have shrunk as a result of COVID-19. So there is also an issue about whether there will be demand for these cocoa beans that will be produced during this crop season, because if the chocolate producers are not able to really stabilize their finances very well, then there will not be so much of a demand for these cocoa beans, even though there is huge market as a huge production as expected. So that's the situation. That's how the outlook really looks like at the moment. There is going to be an increase in production for the crop season, but then depending on how the election goes and the global buyers in terms of how the shocks caused by the pandemic has hit them, if they would really have a high demand for the cocoa beans is something that remains to be seen. It's quite uncertain at the moment, Uche.
Uncertain it is. Well, many thanks, Nabil, for your insights there. Now, earlier, Nabil actually looked at the impact of the central bank decision to maintain its key interest rate at 14.5%, as, of course, lockdown restrictions in the country ease. Now, the central bank reduced its lending rate from 16% back in February to 14.5% in March when the coronavirus pandemic hit the country.
Ghana's economy is on the path to recovery. As lockdown restrictions are further lifted, businesses are trying to bounce back. This is the third time in a row the central bank has held the interest rate at 14.5% since the COVID-19 outbreak started. It's designed to help businesses access affordable credit, but some economists were hoping for a rate cut.
The projections show that inflation is likely to moderate. So if inflation is to moderate, then one would expect the interest rate also to come down a little bit to reflect that projections. And again, the actual inflation has also reduced from 11 to 10.5%. That also gives an indication that inflation in terms of prices, general prices, are quite better. So coupled with that, we would expect the central bank to have reduced it at least by 50 or 100 basis points.
The country's GDP dropped by 3.2% in the second quarter on an annual basis due to COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. This year's election could pose a further risk to the government's budget plans that were already disrupted by the pandemic. Governments in Ghana historically spend more during election years in an attempt to win votes. The Bank of Ghana says the target of limiting the fiscal deficit at 5% of GDP will not be hit. The government has revised its 6.9% projected GDP growth for this year to 0.9%, but the central bank predicts the economy to grow more than that, forecasting between 2 to 2.5%.
Based on what the central bank is telling us and some discoveries in terms of oil discoveries, coupled with confidence in the economy based on the outcome of the election, we are likely to recover much quickly than expected. And one would expect Ghana to do somewhere within 3 to 5% going into next year.
Despite the positive outlook for Ghana's economy, the central bank says it is unclear whether the lending rate will be reduced or increased before the year ends. This is due to uncertainty of government spending as it tries to further limit the shocks caused by the pandemic. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
And let's move on now. South Sudan and Sudan have agreed to increase oil production to pre-civil war levels in order to try and salvage their battered economies. Now, both nations are experiencing an economic crisis caused by the pandemic-related crude oil price plunge that, of course, has impacted forex inflows, leading to a steep increase in food prices. From Juba, here's CGTN's Patrick Oyet with more on that.
South Sudan depends on oil to fund 98% of its budget. The country's oil passes through Sudan's Port Sudan and then on to the international market. Khartoum is paid transit fees in US dollars, and the oil sector provides jobs for many Sudanese people. A global fall in oil prices due to the coronavirus has therefore resulted in a lack of foreign currency. oil production is plummeting and inflation is rising in both South Sudan and Sudan. Now, petroleum ministers from the two countries say they are working to increase production.
It is a new beginning for the two nations, that we will be collaborating, we'll be cooperating, and we will really be looking to the issues as they arise with open heart and open mind.
The civil war, which began in 2013 in South Sudan, halted production in some oil fields in the country. South Sudan is currently producing 140,000 barrels of oil per day, but it says it wants to increase output to 350,000 barrels per day, as was the case before the civil war. Juba and Khartoum have agreed to expedite production in new oil fields in South Sudan as a way to increase output.
We in Sudan have the technical capacity to help our South Sudanese brothers and sisters to do more oil exploration and production so that we save our two countries from the economic challenges we face now.
Both countries hope that oil holds the key to stabilizing their economies as they head into pastures unknown. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
And now a look at some corporate headlines. South African chemicals and fuel manufacturer Sasol has agreed to sell a $2 billion stake in its U.S.-based chemicals business to Leondale Basel Industries to help pay down debt. Now, the unit will become a joint venture between the Johannesburg-based company and the U.S. chemicals giant. The deal is subject to a vote by shareholders and is expected to be completed this year. Meanwhile, Kenyan lender Equity Group has announced a new partnership with French development finance institution Proparco. The partnership involves a financing of up to $100 million and will allow the Kenyan bank to grow its support to the private sector and its commitment to micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as women entrepreneurs. It should also aid in the development of rural areas through dedicated products. And Google has postponed the Australian rollout of News Showcase. This is after the country's antitrust body pushed for laws forcing Google to pay royalties for content industry-wide. Now, the delay represents a snag in a strategy widely seen as an effort by the tech heavyweight to show it can work with media companies. This is as governments worldwide, led by Australia, look to new laws to make the firm pay for content on its search engine. And finally, British billionaires, the Issa brothers and private equity group TDR Capital have agreed to buy the British supermarket chain Asda from Walmart for an enterprise value of $8.8 billion. Now, the deal will enable the brothers take Asda back under British ownership for the first time since 1999. The new owners want to drive growth at Britain's third biggest supermarket chain by expanding its presence into smaller neighborhood shops in order to add to its large supermarket format. And that is a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's head into a short break now, still coming up on the show. Nigeria announces a $33.2 billion budget to navigate out of its worst economic crisis in years. And Egypt discovers a new gold mine in the mineral-rich Eastern Desert.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there. There's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome back. Now, ties between the African continent and the UK have been reshaped in recent months. This has been attributed to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which came into force last year, as well as the official withdrawal of the UK from the European Union at the end of January this year, and of course the COVID-19 pandemic. With trade between the UK and the African continent estimated to be worth about $8 billion, analysts now say that policymakers need to close the gaps that could reverse dwindling trade relations and, of course, help the UK reclaim its lost position as the top investor in Africa. Well, that was all part of the discussion I had earlier with Eugene Nizeyimana. He is the CEO of the African Business Chamber.
Brexit and especially COVID-19 has transformed the global trade landscape in many ways, and we've seen a huge shift in terms of how we see the global trade moving forward. We've seen a lot of shift from globalization to deglobalization, to localization, a lot of protectionism within so many countries. Brexit also has changed the focus of Britain in the global landscape, where now they are starting to renegotiate their trade agreement.
Well, looking closer at the UK-Africa relationship, back in January, you know, the UK-Africa summit took place in London, and that summit ended with very few concrete commitments from the UK government, and of course proposals to just roll over the existing EU-Africa EPAs that currently exist. So what did that indicate to you in terms of Africa's importance to the UK in the wake of Brexit?
I think we need, Africa is, of course, is very optimistic about the new relationship moving forward between UK and Africa. And of course, UK-Africa Investment Summit created a new opportunity, not to underestimate what was achieved at the time, but I know more has been done. For example, I've been talking to DIT, and moving forward from the summit, they've created what we call Africa Investors Group, which is now the new channel looking at opportunities or investment opportunity for UK businesses to re-engage with. And there's a bit more that has taken place beyond the summit. And recently, UK Export Finance just invested 120 million to champion export in Ghana. We've seen CDC investing over $1 billion and working with Rwanda to build the Africa Financial Center. So there's more taking place beyond the summit, and that was just a kickoff. But there are going to be quite a lot more opportunity. There's quite a lot of discussion going on. Of course, I can't disclose until it's fully agreed.
Now, another exciting thing coming up is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. It will be kicking off soon. And once it does, it will provide that one-stop access to Africa's markets and, of course, a harmonization of standards and rules going forward. How do you expect this will change how trade agreements will look between the UK and Africa going forward?
I think one of the biggest opportunity for African Free Trade Area Agreement is it's going to create and harness intra-African trade. Originally, African has been criticized for trading more outwards than inwards. So this one is going to create more opportunity for African country to trade between themselves. Of course, in addition to that, it's going to create more opportunity between UK and Africa, and this gives a better way for UK to negotiate a simple and effective way to deal with African region as a whole rather than individuals. So hopefully, if UK can be able to come up with a better economic partnership agreement with Africa through the Africa Trade Agreement, this is a great opportunity for them even to engage countries that they don't have historical arrangement or trade relationship. I've been talking to quite a lot of countries that are not non-Commonwealth countries or countries that did not participate in the African Investment Summit, and countries that do not have a relationship with the UK that are very keen and are very optimistic to engage UK in business through the African Trade Agreement.
Meanwhile, Nigeria's government has announced a national budget of $33.2 billion for next year as it braces for one of its worst economic crises in years. Now, it is a record budget for Africa's largest economy. It comes at a time when the government has seen its revenues depleted as much as 60% as a result of falling oil prices and, of course, a coronavirus-induced slowdown. CGTN's Deji Batmus has the rest of the story.
The budget is a clear statement of the intent by the Nigerian government to spend its way out of a looming economic recession. Despite an estimated 60% drop in the country's revenue and the continued fall in the price of oil, the budget is a 17.2% increase over the revised 2020 budget.
The budget assumptions include 1. Crude oil price benchmark at $40 per barrel. 2. Oil production at 1.86 million barrels per day. Exchange rate of 379 naira to $1 US. 4. GDP growth target of 3%. And 5. Inflation rate of 11.95%. We have a total aggregate expenditure revenue of 7.89 trillion and also an aggregate expenditure of 13.08 trillion for 2021. There is a fiscal deficit of 4.489 trillion. This represents 3.64%, slightly above what is required by the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 3%.
It's an ambitious budget for Nigeria at this time and means the managers of the economy have their task cut out. Achieving a growth rate of 3% and bringing down inflation to 11.95% will be tough. And to compound matters, the outlook for oil trading far above the region of $40 per barrel on the medium to long term is not positive. But the managers of the economy are still optimistic.
So we expect to have more revenues to fund the budget. There's also a lot of improvement on our revenue generation. Even though we haven't gotten to where we want to be, but we have seen a steady increase in the revenue from 2018 to today, and we expect that trajectory to continue as we implement the strategic revenue and growth initiative.
One thing though is certain, the government would have to borrow to fund part of the budget, and that will further drive up the size of its debt financing. The president is expected to formally present the budget to Parliament next week. Now, analysts expect the lawmakers to review some of the projections contained in the document before eventually returning it to the president for his final assent. Deji Batmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
And let's head to Egypt now. The country has discovered a new gold mine in the mineral-rich Eastern Desert, with reserves estimated at more than 1 million ounces. Now, authorities said the mine was found on a mining concession run by state-owned Shalatine Mining Company. The find could be worth as much as $1 billion US. Well, Yasser Hakim reports that the discovery is already creating interest in the country's mineral wealth that remains largely underexplored and underdeveloped.
Gold mining is back on the map for Egypt's economy after years of negligence. And the latest discovery, with its $1 billion worth of reserves, is a promising sign of what's to come.
The previous gold mining law provided so many obstacles to investors. For example, it would take more than a year for an investor to receive their license to operate after renting the concession area. so they would be idle for a year. Royalties to the government and profit sharing were too high, and these kept investors away.
Only 2 excavation licenses have been issued since 2005, El Sukkari and Shalatin gold mines. The government therefore amended the gold mining law twice to adhere to international standards and provide more favorable conditions for excavators. Ratified in 2019, the new law won over the international investors. 15 companies have bid for the latest auction, 56,000 square kilometers of exploration concessions in the Eastern Desert. Winning bids are yet to be announced.
In May 2019, the government announced that it had received $107 million of royalties from Al Sukkari mine alone. Imagine the revenue if we have 10 or 20 gold concessions, plus doing the same with other minerals. It would add good value to the country's GDP.
Upon realizing the huge potential of the gold mining sector, the government has decided to release a concession excavation auction every 4 months. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break now, but still to come on the show. The United Kingdom implements a ban on single-use plastics 6 months after it was first supposed to come into force. And we look at some of the latest mobility technology on display at the Beijing Auto Show.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Just about 1:30, let's recap today's top headlines. More than 50 women in the Democratic Republic of Congo allege they were sexually exploited by aid workers from the World Health Organization and other agencies. They say the incidents occurred during the Ebola outbreak that took place in the east of the country between 2018 and 2020. And Sudan's transitional government is set to finalize a peace deal with several armed groups on Saturday. The signing of the agreement is set to take place in neighboring South Sudan. Now, the deal aims to end 17 years of armed conflict in Sudan. Meanwhile, authorities in Ethiopia's most populous state, Oromia, say they have arrested more than 500 people. The suspects were allegedly working to cause disturbances during the annual Iricha Thanksgiving festival. The festival is observed by the Oromo, the country's largest ethnic group. Of course, security has been tightened ahead of celebrations. And finally, in Uganda, hospitals are running out of space for COVID-19 patients, forcing the government to manage some mild cases through home care. Now, the country recently opened a temporary treatment facility at a sports stadium, but it has already been filled with patients. Coronavirus cases have surged in the country over the past month after the government further eased lockdown measures. And that's a recap of today's top headlines. Now Let's get some international news. The European Union wants a new trade deal with Britain, but not at any price. This is according to the head of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. There are still a few significant hurdles to finding a way to smooth relations when a post-Brexit transition arrangement ends this year. There's also just under 2 weeks before what both British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the EU have set as a deadline for reaching a trade agreement. Johnson will speak to von der Leyen on Saturday to assess the negotiations on their future relationship and agree on the next steps after the bloc launched a legal case against Britain over their earlier divorce deal.
We want a deal because we think it is better to have a deal as neighbors. Also on top, in these COVID times with devastating impact on the economies, it is good to have a deal, but not at any price. There's still a lot of work to do, but it is, as I say, a matter of fairness. And if you want to have the full access to the single market, these fairness rules must apply. Therefore, this is so difficult. But overall, where there is a will, there is a way. So I think we should intensify the negotiations because it's worth working hard on it.
Meanwhile, the coronavirus pandemic has put the enforcement of some new laws in the UK on hold. But on October 1st, an England-wide ban on single-use plastics such as straws, cotton buds and drink stirrers came into force. Now, the law, which was supposed to be introduced in April, followed an intense global debate about how plastics are polluting the environment, as well as beaches and oceans. CGTN's Nawid Jabrakil reports from London.
The UK's fight against plastic pollution is stepping up a gear. From October 1st, the sale of plastic straws, stirrers and cotton buds will be illegal in England. At this cosmetics retailer in London, 65% of their products have no packaging at all. It's found using less plastic makes business sense.
It's saving business money because, of course, you don't have to pay for that piece of plastic. You don't have to create that part. You can actually just create a product that, like, the customer can just use as it is. So there's no waste.
But there is plenty of waste being generated at the moment. In England alone, each year, almost 5 billion plastic straws are used. More than 300 million plastic stirrers are thrown away, as well as around 1.8 billion plastic-stemmed cotton buds.
The government is hoping tough action like bans and penalties will change the behaviour of both businesses and consumers. And there's evidence it works. The UK's main supermarkets began charging about 7 cents for plastic bags back in 2015. Since then, sales of them have fallen by 95%.
Environmental campaigners have welcomed the move but say far more needs to be done. City to Sea is an organisation that fights plastic pollution. Its Refill app, which encourages people to reuse plastic bottles, has been downloaded more than 300,000 times worldwide.
The public are really engaged. They really care about the environment. COVID has definitely brought everyone closer to nature, to understanding the issues that we might be facing for years.
And perhaps naturally, you've mentioned COVID a few times now. In the middle of a global pandemic, lots of people may wonder whether this is an issue that we really should be dedicating time and money to.
It definitely is. We only have one planet, and now is the time that we need to act. The amount of waste going into our environment is atrocious. So we use over 300 million tonnes of plastic, and half of that is single use every year.
The UK's latest move may be significant, but it's only a drop in the ocean in the global fight against plastic pollution. It's estimated 8 million tonnes of the material finds its way into our oceans every year. Nawid Jabrakil, CGTN, London.
And let's head to the US now, where tens of thousands of airline workers are being laid off now that an emergency COVID-19 lifeline has run out. The $25 billion program kept paychecks flowing to employees, even though almost all air traffic was grounded when the pandemic hit. But now lawmakers remain deadlocked over a second bailout program. Well, CGTN's Owen Faircurlow has the latest.
An American Airlines flight preparing for takeoff. But attendant Ali Malice won't be among any of the company's crews for now.
I don't know how to feel right now. Do I feel sad? Do I feel
scared? Do I feel angry and frustrated? There's so many emotions that are pulsing through my veins and through the veins of 8,000 other American Airlines flight attendants who are also on this last day of the payroll support program, which has stabilized our jobs, maintained our health care, and we don't know what's going to happen next.
But that payroll lifeline has expired, and Ali is among tens of thousands of workers from US Airlines now furloughed.
Lawmakers have been deadlocked for weeks now over how little or how much to spend on a new COVID-19 relief package. Republicans are accusing Democrats of inflating the value of any new deal to help Democrat-run cities and states. All this just weeks before a bitterly contested election.
The head of American Airlines says as the economy recovers, even a temporary bailout extension would be enough.
It doesn't need to be all the way recovered by any means, but say 80% of what it used to be, then we would be flying all of our airplanes. We would need to employ the people that we still have employed.
As lawmakers continue to wrangle, US airline workers can only look in envy at Germany. Employees at carrier Lufthansa are continuing to receive up to 90% of their regular income, thanks in part to state subsidies. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Well, let's shift gears now to China's auto market, where CGTN Xia Cheng was on the ground at Auto China 2020, also known as the Beijing Auto Show. Now, the latest mobility technology was on display, led by electric vehicles.
It's a powwow for electric vehicle makers at the Auto China 2020 in Beijing.
This is a BMW i3 Urban Suit. So different from the older one, this is different from, this is more luxury feeling, and everything goes to the back seat. Maybe driver over there, and the boss sitting behind.
Exactly.
Very cool.
But you said the mileage, the battery is not strong enough.
Yes, I guess it's need to improve, but we'll see.
When we talk about, the new breed of automakers, a lot of people are comparing, Chinese NIO and American Tesla. Both are making innovations in batteries.
Yes.
Do you have any preference?
But I guess they are going to different ways. Tesla is going to researching the technology of batteries, but also in other ways, NIO just do the charging, the battery charging stations.
Charging stations. Okay.
So they go different ways, but the feeling of the users are different.
And the autonomous driving experience is getting smarter.
We do see there is a big step in terms of implementing the technologies we talked about. For example, a lot of domestic brands have demonstrating their scenario-based advanced driving assistance system. It was only talking about the parking assistance function a few years back, but this year we are seeing a lot of Chinese brands are demonstrating their capability in terms of scenario-based autonomous driving in the highway, or maybe going forward in another 2-3 years in terms of the open roads.
In our premium model Harbor H6, we offer automation technology that track your original wheel path. It allows the driver to quickly reverse the car easily, following the previous wheel path, when bumping into other cars in the opposite direction in very narrow lanes. Besides, on our cars, this technology can only be seen on expensive car models, such as BMW X5. We offer this solution with a fraction of the price.
China wants to be a leader in auto technology. It has used subsidies and other forms of policies to turn the country into the world's biggest electric vehicle market, accounting for half of global sales. To heat up market competition in 2018, China scrapped the foreign ownership limit for EV makers.
There is some course change in terms of the growth rate. But on the other hand, you have seen some of the EV players or new entrants who are actually very successful on really getting their product to the market. And they also having the subsidy, but in the meantime, they have been also able to really maintain their price position, even when the subsidy is actually coming down over the year.
How will China's electric vehicle market maintain its vitality without cash injections?
The overall, in a big scheme of things, the support will, we will see, the gradually reduction of the support,
And along the way, it might change the format from a discount or subsidy or tax side to how to foster a kind of a better usage environment. For example, we might see a little bit more support getting to infrastructure like charging stations, network, and all that. But overall, I think it will move to the consumer-driven market.
Xia Cheng, CGTN, Beijing.
And on that note, let's turn our attention to commodity markets today. Gold prices headed for their best weekly gain in nearly 2 months. That is despite prices slipping from a more than 1 week high as the dollar strengthened today. Now, all this amid doubts regarding the U.S. stimulus package. Meanwhile, oil prices extending losses to fall about 2% after a U.S. stimulus package eluded negotiators amid ongoing worries about demand. Brent fell more than 4% on the day in a second consecutive week of declines. Well, let's take a short break now. Still coming up. We look at how TikTok turned the fortunes for a social media influencer in South Africa.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Administration, Tunis, Cairo,
Syria,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
After quite a lot of pushback, Nigeria is now giving some recognition to the trade in digital currencies. The country's Securities and Exchange Commission recently announced that it would begin to regulate the activities of cryptocurrency operators to provide protection for investors. Now, authorities in the West African nation had in the past declined to recognize digital currencies as legal tender. CGTN's Deji Batmus examines the new proposals.
It's barely 2 years now since Nigeria's central bank issued strong warnings against the use of cryptocurrencies in the country. Despite the warnings, the adoption of digital currencies is growing rapidly in Nigeria. It's essentially the reason why the authorities have now decided to regulate its operations, with the Nigeria Securities and Exchange Commission saying it will now begin to treat crypto assets as securities and that operators must register with the Commission. For digital currency operators, the decision is a big deal and something they had long been yearning for.
It's a welcome development, and it's been long overdue considering the increase in adoption and use case in Nigeria. The SEC is only a handful of regulators across the continent that have sort of put forward a proposal, even though 60% of the African governments are yet to clarify their position. So yes, I think it's very important because lack of regulation has been one of our major challenges in the business globally. And we at Luno, for instance, we support regulation, and we believe because it will sort of help protect customers.
But the regulation by the SEC does not mean cryptocurrency is now a legal tender in Nigeria. It is not. According to the SEC, crypto asset means a digital representation of value that can only be digitally traded and functions as a medium of exchange, unit of account, and or a store of value. It also adds that crypto asset is neither issued nor guaranteed by any jurisdiction and fulfills its functions only by agreement within the community of users of the crypto asset and distinguished from fiat currency and e-money. But operators are really not bothered by that.
From the SEC's release, it states that the general objective is not to hinder technology or stifle innovation, but to help create a standard that would encourage ethical practices and make it a fair and efficient market. So I do not have any concerns for now. I think it's going to help increase and improve adoption and acceptance because regulation, like I mentioned, it sort of brings clarity and also help protect business and customers.
Indeed, the use of cryptocurrency is on the rise in Nigeria, with one report ranking the country 5th globally. Quite a number of traders now use it for imports to overcome biting forex challenges. And with the increasing adoption, most operators believe it's only a matter of time before digital currencies become legal tender, not just in Nigeria, but across the world. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Now, video sharing app Vskit, which has become popular in many African nations, has yet to penetrate the South African market. Well, TikTok, however, is causing a social networking sensation with the rise of influencers or new age celebrities and a phenomenal growth of user numbers. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Video sharing app Vskit has taken off in Nigeria and East African countries, but South Africans, many of whom have never heard of Vskit, are smitten by TikTok. Influencer and actress Azimbamvi Rambunda loves the app.
Yes, a little bit cold outside, but hey, we're filming, yo. There we go.
Socially known as Mrs. Litelu, TikTok has boosted her public profile when she's not on set.
You just play around, have fun, engage with your audience as well, have that relationship with them, and they see a different person. Already they know me as Mpo, as a character, right? Now they see this different being, the authentic me, and not entirely just the character they see all the time on TV, because I'm way different from the person that they see.
The application is owned by Beijing-based tech company ByteDance. It has become the most downloaded app in South Africa over the last year.
The big stars of TikTok are aged between around 17 and 30, even though their followers tend to be younger. We've seen in the last few years that the youth have started abandoning Facebook because it's now seen as mainstream. It's seen as the environment that's dominated by their parents. TikTok was seen as an arena that they could own for themselves.
TikTok users spend hours creating and watching content for fun, but it's become serious business for an ever-increasing number of influencers.
So I have a huge following, and already brands just want to work with you because they want to share in your audience as well. And when I got pregnant, the very first brands that came for me were people who wanted to show baby products, and I was like, let's see, let's try out.
The primary difference between a celebrity and an influencer is that the celebrity is broadcasting to their followers, whereas the influencer is interacting with their followers. And for brands, that is often far more valuable because it means there's an ongoing conversation rather than a quick, short blast of marketing.
In South Africa, Vskit has been dwarfed by TikTok. Tech experts are backing its popularity for at least 5 years or until the next big internet sensation comes along. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's turn our attention now to bees. They play a crucial role everywhere, from the oxygen we breathe to the fruits that nourish us. Now, the species, however, is under threat due to climate change and other causes, but all is not lost just yet. CGTN's Adnan Ishaushi explores what a startup in Tunisia is doing to help beekeepers counter that threat.
When Khaled Bouchoucha's family got into beekeeping more than 3 decades ago, their business was lucrative and the environmental conditions were perfect for bees to thrive. But in 2011, his father lost 22% of his beehives due to unprecedented weather conditions. Khaled launched a remote beehive monitoring system to help his father and more than 12,000 beekeepers in Tunisia with real-time data.
The idea behind the project is to know what is happening inside the beehives on a real-time basis. So the event recognition, the harmful event recognition, like the collapsing beehives, the weakness of the beehives, dead beehives, stolen beehives, etc. So we help the beekeeper know what's happening inside his beehives on a real-time basis, and we give him a lot of data, a lot of information.
The Iris Technologies chief executive is also a data processing engineer. He is worried about the impact of drought and the lack of water on honeybee colonies in the North African country.
Now, what we see is like the behavior of the colony is changing due to the global warming thing. So we are trying to understand what is happening, the new behavior of the beehive, okay, the new behavior of the colony.
The Institution for Agricultural Research and Higher Education at Tunisia's Ministry of Agriculture is a government entity in charge of supporting researchers who are providing solutions that could help overcome some major problems caused by the intensive exploitation of land and water.
Donc, la problématique de l'eau est une véritable...
The water issues and scarcity are a real concern. We encourage young researchers, startups as well as university teachers to focus on this challenge.
SmartBee, the electronic device which monitors bees on a daily basis and sends farmers smartphone updates, is one of the innovations which are revolutionizing beekeeping in the country. Tunisian tech startups are willing to develop more solutions to counter climate change's effects on nature. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, before we leave you today, here's a quick look at Africa's currencies. South Africa's rand weaker as we saw U.S. President Donald Trump's positive COVID-19 test announcement, putting riskier assets under pressure today. Given the overriding news of Trump's illness, market sentiment will remain a constraint to riskier currencies, including the South African rand. In Nigeria, the exchange rate at the NAFEX window strengthened slightly today against the dollar to close at 382 naira per dollar. It closed at around 465 naira per dollar at the parallel market as the pressure on the forex market dropped due to Independence Day activities yesterday. Well, that is it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.